Mr. Kinsey decided to take with him but two men, Plante and Pierre LeRoy, the former to act as guide, on the assurance that he knew every mile of the way, from the Portage to Ogie's Ferry and from Ogie's Ferry to Chicago. We had long been aware that our stock of provisions was insufficient for another day, and here we were, nobody knew where, in the midst of woods and prairies, certainly far from any human habitation, with barely enough food for a slender evening's meal. The morrow came. Plante and Roy had a bright fire and a nice pot of coffee for us. It was our only breakfast, for on shaking the bag and turning it inside out, we could make no more of our stock of bread than 3 crackers, which the rest of the party insisted I should put in my pocket for my dinner.
Yes, his grandson was my grandfather.
My name is Mimi Hayashi. I am the great-great-granddaughter of Pierre LeRoy and Rachel Grignon. It traced through my mother's side. My mother was a LeRoy, and she grew up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and her father also grew up in that area, Harvey LeRoy, and then his father was John LeRoy, and he was the son of Pierre and Rachel.
When you look at the big picture of the whole family, it's amazing that it wasn't really that long ago.
Rachel and Pierre's grandparents were the 2 founding families of Métis Portage. The union of the LeRoy and Grignon families brings together a host of fascinating connections.
That's been the very exciting part of this whole journey, is with Pierre. If you go up his tree and you look at his father was Francois LeRoy, who built what is now the surgeon's quarters in Portage. Francois was a fur trader, and then going up one more generation was his father Joseph, who also, I believe, was a fur trader, and his home is in Heritage Hill State Park.
Joseph's wife was Marguerite. She was a Menominee woman. Her father was Chief Standing Earth. But going back down to Francois's wife, he married what would sound like a French woman, Therese Lecourier. She came from a very noted Ho-Chunk family, actually on 2 sides, the Karamani or Walking Turtle family, and her great-great-grandmother was Glory of the Morning.
Then going back down to Pierre and Rachel. Rachel Grignon is another Wisconsin family that when you start to go up, they were very instrumental in forming the state of Wisconsin.
And then from her family, or if you go up, her grandmother, I believe it was a de Langlade. And she was the daughter of Charles de Langlade, who is known as the father of Wisconsin. His father was French. His mother was an Ottawa woman.
And also, when you talk about the fur trade, Charles de Langlade's 3rd great-grandfather was Pierre-Esprit Radisson, who formed the Hudson Bay Company.
Add in the Canadian Red River Métis connections of Rachel's parents, and that rounds out a mind-boggling array of lives entrenched in major moments of Great Lakes Métis history. And yet for Mimi, it has been a hidden story for most of her life.
I knew my grandfather. He passed away when I was 17. He had a look, but it was Grandpa. And now looking back, everything made more sense. Like when you look at a picture of him and you look at Chief Nakaw, you go, oh yeah.
I found out, it was shortly before my mom died in 2011. She brought it up, and looking back, I was surprised. But then looking at family photos, you could definitely see the Native American, and it made sense.
She always kind of blew off when you would ask about ancestry. So it was something, and she even knew that I was, interested. But I do think that there was a lot of hurt possibly there. And so when she had given me a little bit of information and started talking, and it just built from there.
She really didn't say a lot. It was just, that, we were Native American. And, she talked a little bit about when they would go to her grandmother's house in the summer, and, they would definitely look Native American from being outside and tanning, and how, her mom would kind of keep them away from the outside for a little bit even, because it was, I think it was just a hard
People
time.
were treated differently then about any type of ancestry, much less Native American.
I've had some people say to me, well, why didn't your family talk about it? I really don't believe that, mine was the only family. It's all out there that it was not something you talked about. And, it's sad. And it's unfortunately, it's history. It is what it is, but it's important to move forward. And I'm sure that that's maybe how they were thinking of it.
Similar to other branches of the LeRoy family, Pierre and Rachel chose to face the future in the areas they already knew when the point of decision came in 1840.
They haven't gone too far. My mother grew up in Oshkosh, and I know that her father was born in Amro, and he died in Oshkosh, so he was always in that area. My great-grandfather John was also always in that area. I do believe he was born in Green Lake. I currently live in Princeton, which is near Green Lake, which is where Chief Nakaw had a village, and also where Francois LeRoy, when he left the surgeon's quarters, had moved to Green Lake, and Pierre had a home near Green Lake, and he actually was friends with the original settlers of the Dartford area, and that is within 10 miles of my current home where I grew up. So yeah, we haven't gone too far.
It was a tough road. I think it's always easy to say I want to stay where my home is because you're familiar with it. I'm going to say he must have loved this area to stay here. But it was a tough road because of the Removal Act, and having to live with some of the things that happened in our country to the Métis and the Native Americans of that time.
The turbulence of the 19th century was perhaps nothing new to Mimi's ancestors. Colliding nations, tumult, and warfare had already made its mark in the family's experiences over the previous century.
Because they were involved in many wars.
Yeah.
When you look at, and I'm going to use Charles de Langlade, who is my fifth great grandfather. While he fought for everyone. He fought for the British. He fought for the French. He fought for the Native Americans with his mother was Ottawa, but he fought 99 battles, and it's not like, it's not like today's wars. These were on foot, on horseback, and they were very physical times then, and he fought in the Battle of Monongahela.
And it was the Battle of Fort Duquesne where he defeated General Braddock and George Washington. So that when you look at historically the Revolution and the family's part, it again, it's a big picture that's very overwhelming. Some people I talked to and said, they knew this for some time. That's each family's a little bit different. Each person's a little bit different. So I found out later, and when I remember looking at the ancestry chart and going, these are names that, like, I think I read about when I was little in school.
And you know, there were so many times that we used to ski at Cascade Mountain, and we would drive past the Sturgeon's quarters, and it's like, what is that place?